Diana's arrival in the royal family blew some of the cobwebs out of the Windsor's stuffy Edwardian traditions. Her relationships with servants were far less formal than protocol dictated, says a journalist who's written half a dozen books on the monarchy.
She shocked them in many ways when she first turned up on the scene by going into the kitchen, kicking off her shoes, pouring out a glass of wine and chatting with them whilst they were preparing the food. Now that has been unheard of, and in fact Prince Charles frowned upon it. But Diana didn't care. She was somebody who was able to mix with anybody, transcend class.
She would actually call people by their first names. And Charles found this very strange.
No one served Diana at closer quarters than Ken Wharf. The officer from Scotland Yard's elite protection squad shadowed the princess day and night, gun at the ready.
There are a lot of fixated people out there. We would say in the olden days, nutters. Can't always plan for that sort of attack. The worst case scenario, of course, is an assassination.
Diana once said to me, "Would you take a bullet for me?" I said, "Well, ma'am, of course I would, but I prefer not to. But let's don't get into a situation where we have to bring that about." The protection officer needs to strike up that chemistry, to build up that relationship, so they share that exchange of information, because information in the security industry is absolute power, and if you've got that, you can then plan the best.
Chemistry between the bodyguard and the princess was good enough for even Diana's young sons to begin treating him like family, especially after their parents separated.
When William was at school, there was the father's race. Well, of course, there was no father around. So William says, "Oh, you can be Papa and you can run for father's race." So Diana says, "Yeah, you've got to do it now." So I had sort of secretly hand over my gun to my colleague, take my jacket off, and then take part in the father's race.
Wharf also helped Diana get the princess some decidedly unroyal meals.
When William and Harry finished their school, she would say, "Look, do you want to go and have a McDonald's?" So we literally sort of walk down the road here and sort of pitch up a McDonald's. Diana wanted William and Harry to see what other people did. It was her way of breaking them into what she would refer to as normality.
Guarding the royals gets trickier when they're being a danger to themselves. Diana sometimes took risks with the attitude that staff could sort things out and that she could get away with anything.
I noticed that Diana's speed was reaching 90 miles an hour, which is 20 miles over the legal limit. And I said, "What's your speed, ma'am?" She said, "Well, you'll take care of it if anything happens." I said, "Well, no, actually." I said, "You'll have to take care of it." And almost immediately, I got a signal from my backup car to say, "We think there's an unmarked police car approaching." And by sheer coincidence, this car did arrive. And this guy said, well, realizing who it was, said, "Oh, well, I'll let you do that." I said, "No, you deal with it. It's your responsibility." And he gave her this lecture and essentially said, "Look, you know, I'm giving you an official caution on this occasion." The great thing about the policeman's role is that, of course, we were not employed by Her Majesty. We could be honest and actually say things that they actually didn't like listening to. If anything did go disastrously wrong, I always had another job to go back to.
If Scotland Yard could get away with speaking truth to royalty, that would be risky business for anyone like a butler.
The only one thing you must always remember is that the royal family may not always be right, but they're never wrong.
Paul Burrell was full-time with the Princess of Wales now that she and Charles no longer lived together.
Princess's life wasn't easy. She had no one she could confide in. So often I was the punching bag. Often I got caught in the crossfire.
But the butler's devotion was unflagging, and he knew his way around his mistress.
Diana succumbed to flattery, and I think that Burrell was a bit of a superstar at flattering the princess.
Burrell put in long hours for his boss, especially when she needed him to facilitate nighttime rendezvous.
It was my duty to go out in the middle of the night and ferry back people whom she wanted to be with in the boot of my car. My car. On one occasion, I did pick up someone as Kentucky Fried Chicken. Kensington Palace wasn't that secure in those days. I had a routine. Halfway down the drive, I would flash my lights, the police would lift the barrier, and I would speed through. I never stopped. And I deposited my charge at a back door.
A slight movement at an upstairs window told the butler another palace occupant knew exactly what was going on.
On many occasions, a twitching curtain, and Princess Margaret, the Queen's sister, would be peeping. On one occasion, the princess, meeting her lover at the back door, waved and said, "Good night, Margot."
As Diana's life spun out of control, her behavior became more bizarre, including a newfound concern for London's sex trade workers. Once again, she pressed her butler into special service.
I was sent out to give these ladies who were plying their trade on the streets of London £50 notes. And the princess's instructions would be, tell them to go home. Of course, they didn't go home. They stayed out all night. But in her way, she was helping. So with a fistful of £50 notes, I tried to stop the prostitution trade in London. I didn't really care how she treated me in the long term, because I was only doing my job.
Burrell's job description knew no bounds, once including the work of an undertaker. Diana asked him to dig a 6-foot-deep grave for her friend's miscarried baby in the walled garden at Kensington Palace.
As we dug that grave, I said to the princess, "Are you sure this is all right?" She said, "Well, do you know, I'm not sure, but I know it's the best thing to do." I said, "Have you told the Queen you're doing this? Because this is her garden. It's Crown property." She said, "No, I haven't told the Queen. I don't think she'd understand."
Royals do what they want, when they want, even if their most trusted advisors tell them it'll end in disaster. As the highest-ranking aide to Princess Diana, Cambridge-educated Patrick Jeffson saw danger looming for his boss.
The art of giving advice includes knowing when your advice is not going to be taken, and then you have to switch to a different art, which is damage control.
The private secretary had plenty of damage to control as Charles and Diana indulged in extramarital relationships in their country house, all witnessed by their servants.
They knew exactly what was going on, the servants, because they were the ones making up the beds. There's no doubt that they did used to listen at doorways. There was 1 or 2 occasions when the doors were slamming and then Prince Charles would walk out and there'd be 3 or 4 servants just outside, almost knocked over as he walked past them.
The conflict escalated when Charles crushed his wife by openly admitting to adultery in a BBC documentary. Diana's private secretary advised her to turn the other cheek.
The thing that would make her look semi-divine would have been to forgive, publicly hold out a hand of reconciliation to the rest of the royal family.
But Diana was out for vengeance. Secretly, she taped an interview with the BBC about her marriage. Jeffson was stunned when he heard it was soon to be broadcast.
I would have done anything to get that interview pulled because I felt that it was so damaging to her own future interests. She didn't want me to see it. She didn't want her lawyers to see it. She didn't want anything to be known in advance about it.
Watched by nearly half the country, the Princess of Wales made a frontal assault on her husband. She admitted to cheating on Charles, questioned his ability to be king, and intimated that the crown should pass directly to their son, William. The interview was an embarrassment to the royal family, and the Queen demanded the couple divorce. Diana was stripped of her title, and her private secretary resigned.
It was disappointing to see so much damage being done to her own position by her own actions.
Next, when royals fall, their servants fall with them.
He's regarded as the enemy and will never, ever be forgiven.